So, freeCodeCamp did it again. It added a new workshop from the HTML portion of their full stack developer. And so we are going back in time here and revisiting some of those modules that we missed when we were going through this to begin with. If this is your very first time watching our video sets here, my name is Rob. I'm with PreCodeCamp, and where I go through some of these free CodeCamp modules and workshops and labs, and I try to give it to you at an instructor's point of view. So I want you to learn, and I'm going to teach it as if I'm a live instructor trying to teach the stuff as well. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in, you came to the right video, you came to the right channel, and if you could do one thing for us is hit that thumbs up button on this video. That really helps out that YouTube algorithm. Let's go ahead and get started and diving into the code. Let's learn something, all right? Okay, so if you are watching this video for the very first time, I'm going to be assuming that you are brand new, because typically what I do is I make these helpful videos. I put chapters down below in the description, and we kind of just go through it one by one. What I always tell everybody that visits any of these videos, it might be best to watch it all the way through because it might pick up on things that you may not have known before. And so that's kind of how I structure each one of these videos with freeCodeCamp's modules. Now, the other reason that I'm going to say that if you're watching this video, you might be new, because if you have been watching all of our video series going over freeCodeCamp modules, you may not even need this video whatsoever because we've already gone over some of these items on here. So that's, again, why I say, hey, watch the video if this is your very first time going through freeCodeCamp stuff. We'll go through some documentation, where it comes from, maybe a little bit of history as we're going through this. Like I said, I'm trying to teach this to you all as if I'm coming at you from an instructor point of view. So with that being said, the way that freeCodeCamp works, usually on these workshops, you'll have a splash screen, a little preview of what you are building. And so this is what we're building here. Nothing real fancy as far as styling goes. And this is all built-in natural HTML that we're actually doing here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Start Coding, and let's talk about the different sections that we see here on the freeCodeCamp website. One of the things that you'll see up here is the index.html. So what they typically will do is they will provide you with like line numbers, and that's what your visual editor, that's what you're going to be utilizing. That's where you can go ahead and freely type is inside of here when it asks you to. Each one of these steps in the workshop, it will tell you what it's wanting to do, and some of the ones later on, you may have to guess or think about your answer on what you want to actually type in these lines. This is our preview area over here on the far right. You are able to pop out the preview if you are needing to, and that's right here. You can click the preview button, but because we don't have any kind of code whatsoever in this HTML document that we're making, nothing is showing up right now. But as soon as we start with this step and start typing, we might be able to see some things appear over here in the preview. Now, if you ever get to the point where you're like, hey, I'm checking my code and it doesn't work, what freeCodeCamp has done for you is if you try to click this 3 times, usually there'll be like a little tip here, and sometimes in later modules, the help button doesn't show up until after you do it 3 times, okay? And the help button is very useful because you are able to click on this here. It asks you to research. You can create a help post. And one of the great things about this is it applies all of the code that you have on the page to the forum post. So that's why I do kind of like that. And you can even mention that you were watching one of these videos and you kind of got stuck if you get to that point. But usually with workshops, they're fairly easy to kind of complete and draw out. And like I said, it will give you tips and tricks on, hey, maybe you should try this, or this is why this code test is failing. And then of course you have the reset button here, and this will just basically wipe your state clean and it will go back to the original step prompt. And so that's what I just ended up clicking on. So let's go ahead and talk about step number 1. This is the very first workshop that freeCodeCamp has for everybody starting off on this journey. And it says HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And that's one of the very first questions I always ask my live students whenever we're in our groups here is, does anybody know what HTML stands for? And it does. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is the code that defines the structure and the content of the web page. A lot of times when we instructors, we are teaching to a live students, we always try to compare it to maybe something that we know, something that we all are perceiving here. And I always say, hey, HTML, it's like the bones. CSS, it's like the skin. And when we're talking about JavaScript, that's more like the muscles, the action, what's going on inside. And we do offer a course. We'll talk about that later in this video that goes into a deeper dive if you are all interested in that. But here it says find line 1. And what it's talking about, it is right here. This is the line number that it is talking about right here. That's going to allow us to go ahead and start typing in there. So it says find line 1 and go ahead and type in the text here. Welcome to FreeCodeCamp. Now, you can type it in or you can highlight this and you can paste it. And we aren't applying any kind of HTML tags or anything like that quite yet, but you can already see that the text is now showing up over here in the preview, okay? And I know that we remember looking at the little pop-up that came up when we looked at this, and it doesn't look anything like that quite yet, but that's what special HTML tags are going to do for you. And I'm assuming we're going to get that going here in the next step. But again, this is your IDE, and this is where you can start typing your code. And then once you have it down, this is when you can click the check the code, and usually you'll get some confetti or you'll get something like congratulations, you're ready to move on to the next lesson here or the next step. And then we can go ahead and click this button right here where we are able to submit this, and we're going to move on to the next part of the challenge. So step 1 is complete. Let's go ahead and move on to step 2. All right, so step number 2. HTML is made up of elements, and the first one we're going to do is an H1 element, and we call these tags. Like whenever we are looking at these items right here, I'm going to go ahead and highlight them. So if we see this tag here, we also see a tag over here that's very new, right? And what we're talking about when it comes to these tags is for every time we have an opening tag, we need to put in a closing tag, okay? Now, there are going to be some elements, and we haven't introduced those quite yet in here, but some elements don't even get a closing tag. And, there's documentation that helps you out with all this as well, but some of the common ones, they're just going to start rolling off of your tongue or rolling off of the keyboard here. And it's exactly what FreeCodeCamp here is telling you. Hey, it starts off with an H1, that is the opening tag. And notice that the closing tag has that /. I always tell my students, again, live sessions, you are going to be stretching your fingers on unknown keys that you may not even know that were there. And you may not be as used to this / that you see right here, but you're going to get used to it. Once you graduate to not the IDE that they give you right here, and you go with something like Visual Studio Code, a lot of these tags that we're talking about opening and closing, it does it for you automatically. So you really don't need to remember as much when it comes to this. But like I said, all the common ones that you will use a lot, you'll know whether or not it is going to be an opening or a closing. And it just takes repetition and practice. FreeCodeCamp, the way it works is it makes you hard type these in. It doesn't do any kind of auto completion whatsoever. So what it's asking us here to do is it wants us to turn in the welcome to FreeCodeCamp into an H1 element. And if we remember from up here, H1s, they are open and closed tags. They are not considered a void element. You'll learn about those a little later. And so we want to put in here an H1, and then we come over here and close it off, okay? This will free you of a lot of headaches of, hey, anytime you put a tag on here, make sure that if it's open, then we want to make sure that it's closed. And that's what it wants us to do here. Another thing that I always ask live students as we're going through some of the very basic stuff is, how many headers, right? How many headers are out there, or headings, right? Heading elements. And so we have this H1. What happens is there an H2? Is there an H22? Like, how far does this go? And one of the documentations that I always love pointing students to is W3 Schools. If you just do a Google search, W3 Schools, and the 3 is not THREE, but the number 3. So W3 Schools, and you can just type in whatever element you are interested in. Okay. So these are the HTML headings, and there are 6 of them. So it goes all the way down to 6. If you try to go down to 7, it just ignores it. H1 through H6, if you happen to be asked again. Okay. And one of the great things with W3 Schools is you have this little try it yourself. You can always click on it, and you can actually see what it does. All right. That's very tiny. Later on in the course, later on in your modules from freeCodeCamp, you'll learn about what are the importances on each one of these and when do you want to use one over the other and so on. Just put that in the back of the backpack for right now. It's going to be revisited later. Let's go back to here. We're going to go ahead and click on the check your code. We got the congratulations and we're ready to move on to the next step. All right, step number 3. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. It says, notice that the HTML that you're writing on the editor, it shows up in the preview, and we already talked about that. In the workshop, you're going to go ahead and write the HTML for the particular curriculum web page. So below the H1 element, go ahead and on that empty line, type in full stack curriculum. And so what it's asking for, and if you notice that the code that we just got done writing and typing, it is now on line 1 up here. And so the way that freeCodeCamp works is anything down here in the white area is typically where they want you to go ahead and type and put your new code here. Notice that we have a 1 up here, large gap, and that's because we have some instructions for step number 3. And now we have line number 2. So again, whenever we're working with code, we always reference line numbers. And usually the way that I work is I typically try to only put 1 element per line in there. But line number 2 here, it says it wants us to not put any tags in there quite yet. I believe we're going to do that in the next step. But I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it in there. And we're going to go ahead and check our code. Notice that it did show up in the preview over there. And there we go. We're ready to move on to step number 4. So step number 4, it says an H1 element is the main heading for the web page. And this is the part that you might want to put in your notes, you might want to remember, because typically for every single web page that you have for SEO purposes, for the screen readers aspect, you're going to want to make sure that you only want to carry on that page just one H1 element, and then that's it. So on here, it's telling us, hey, we should only have one of those H1s per page, but the H2 element, it represents a subheading. And then you can have multiple of these per page, but only one H1. So that's what we're going to do to this. It says turn the full stack curriculum text into H2. And if you remember from our previous step, I went to W3 schools and there's 6 of these headings that we can actually go through. And it is introduced us to our heading tags. And so I'm going to put a closing tag here, and then I'm going to come all the way at the beginning and I'm going to do an opening tag here. Notice that the H2 here, this tag here matches the closing one right here. So again, H2, H2, however, the closing one, the main difference here is that forward slash that you see right there. So make sure you have that in order to get credit for this. A lot of times, like I said, students will omit that and then it breaks their code, it breaks these little checks. So let's go and check our code. Congratulations. We're ready to move on to the next one here. So I just want to take a real brief moment here to talk a little bit about PreCodeCamp and what we do here for you. If you are looking to accelerate your learning path with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then PreCodeCamp might be for you. Take a look at the description, but I tell you, the reasons that people want to go with PreCodeCamp is because we can accelerate your time of learning this. You get live classes where you're able to get your questions asked and have them answered. That's one of the big ones here. And then we also have these bite-sized modules, video modules that walk you through things so you can code along with the video, you can get the knowledge, but then at the end of the chapter, at the end of these lessons, it's going to have you do a little miniature challenge for you to complete, for you to feel good, because we're going to grade it. We're going to give you live feedback, and then you are going to keep continuing on with your journey. So if you are looking and you're enjoying this video so far, you're liking the content, and you want to go at this at a higher rate speed, hey, take a look at PreCodeCamp, take a look at the descriptions, because there's a very special discount that's waiting for you that is a really great offer that I don't think that you'd want to turn down. All right. So anyways, let's go ahead and go back to the code and let's finish up these steps. So like I just got done saying, it's all about repetition, and the quicker you can go through it, the better you're going to be. With this step number 5 here, it says below the other 2 lines, let's go ahead and add the text of learn the skills to become a full stack developer. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this And then I'm going to paste this down below, and that should be good enough to get us to go ahead and proceed to the next step. But I want you to notice that the pattern here that freeCodeCamp is trying to get you to go with, which is, hey, let's put the text down first, and then let's add the opening and closing tags. This might be counterintuitive once you graduate from the web to an actual code editor yourself, but hey, we're going to go along with these steps and go along for the journey. So let's go ahead and check our code here. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step, and we already see it over here in our preview. All right, moving on to the next step. All right, so step number 6, it says when you need to add a paragraph to a web page, you can utilize the P element or the P tags. And this is an example of an element. And this is the part where I always tell people with freeCodeCamp is that they're giving us an example up here. So that way we can apply what we just learned to down here. And so instead of wrapping this in an H1 or an H2 or an H3, right, we are now introduced to a new element in this workshop, and it is the paragraph element. And so we can come over here, and then we can go ahead and put the closing tag on here as well. Notice it's the exact same pattern that we saw before. This opening P tag, here's the closing P tag. The pattern is it needs a / in order to be complete. So again, always using documentation to our advantage here while we're learning. W3 Schools paragraph tag is what I would search in Google. This is what shows up here. And here's an example of a paragraph tag, exactly what we saw with freeCodeCamp. It does tell us a little bit more information down here. It says, browsers will automatically add a single blank line before and after each paragraph element. And so if we were to try this for ourselves, for example, and notice that we do have 3 paragraph tags on here, and it added a blank line in between each one of these. And we can even see this H1 here. It gave us enough space for the paragraphs to kind of follow along here. So anyways, just wanted to throw that little tidbit of information at you before we completed this part here of the step. So let's go back here. Let's check our code. And there we go. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next one here. All right. So step number 7 is telling us exactly what we've learned before when we were originally on maybe step number 2, which is there are 6 heading elements, H1 all the way through H6, that are used to show different importance of the sections of your web page. And the H1 is the very most important one, while H6 is the least. So below your paragraph element, which is up here on line 3, we're jumping now to line number 5. And it says that let's go ahead and add an H3 element to this. So now we're combining a couple steps, right? And this is the part where I kind of told you, like, maybe we shouldn't copy and paste automatically and then put the tags in. Let's go ahead and put the tags in first, especially learning, and especially if we're utilizing this to check our code, because it will get you in a hot mess really quick unless you go ahead and do this exact step that I'm trying to tell you right now, which is let's start off with the tag. And this is going to be the H3. And then the question that you want to ask yourself is, does it get a closing tag? And remember, these do. So we need to put the closing tag on there. And now it's safe to go ahead and paste or type what you want to go in between the tags. This will save you a lot of headaches later on with freeCodeCamp. I can't tell you how many people in the comments of these videos are like, hey, thank you. Your video saved me. I was forgetting the closing tag. And hey, I'm reminding you now, go ahead and just make the tags out. Now we can go ahead and check our code. Congratulations. We're ready to move on to step number 8. We're almost done. All right, step number 8. Real quick, before I move on with step number 8, I did want to bring this to everyone's attention. A lot of times, first-time HTML developers are learning to become developers. They think that, hey, just because I hit the enter key here, it adds more lines going down in my preview here. It doesn't, okay? The reader just goes line by line. If there's some blank spaces, it kind of ignores it, okay? So keep that in mind. Very similar to if I come over here and hit the enter key, nothing happened to the code on the right or the preview of what the browser is interpreting of our code. So anyways, I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention who's watching this. Step number 8, it says, notice that each of the heading, they do look a little bit different in the preview. Same with the paragraph. And so it wants us to go ahead and do another paragraph tag but adding this part here. And notice that, again, this might trip some people up. The preview text or what they want us to put inside of the tags might be scrollable. So make sure you grab it all. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that to my clipboard. So we're going to use that tip that I told you in the previous one, which is, hey, anytime we're going to be adding a new tag on here, let's just go ahead and add the tags first and then paste in what we want in between the tags later. And so that's what I'm doing. A paragraph tag, we know it gets a closing tag, and we put that / in there. And I just move my cursor to it be in between them, and then I'm pasting. Now I see that in my preview. I can go ahead and check our code, and there we go. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next step. So step number 9, we are getting the hang of it, right? We're getting the hang of it. Next, let's go ahead and add another H3 element to the bottom of the text editor saying Introduction to CSS. So that's what we're going to do. Again, it's giving us that line code right now on line number 8. I'm going to go ahead and type out the H3, and I'm going to put the closing tag in there immediately. Again, just follow that pattern. You'll never go wrong with the freeCodeCamp version of checking your code. There we go. We now see that the introduction to CSS is down here. Because it's an H3, the introduction to HTML is also same kind of generic styling, and we all get that from those H3 elements. So let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations. Let's move on to the next one. So step number 10 in building a curriculum outline for freeCodeCamp, it tells us that while the HTML defines the structure of the web page, the CSS is also used to add styling like color, font, spacing, layout. We're not going to get into CSS, but it just wants us to be introduced to the term of CSS here. And down below our H3, it wants us to do a paragraph element. So again, paragraph elements are the P tags. And in between here, it wants us to do CSS is used to style a page or style a web page. Let's go ahead and check our code on that one. We got the congratulations. We're moving on to the next step here. So step number 11, I think this is the last one, guys. And it says, finally, JavaScript makes the web page to be interactive. And that's what I told you from the very beginning. JavaScript's like the action, the muscles of the body. And it lets you tell the page what to do when somebody clicks a button and submits a form. And we go through a little bit of this in our JavaScript course of PreCodeCamp of showing you what it looks like when you turn off the JavaScript and try to visit a web page like YouTube, of where you're probably watching this video, and what that acts like, and you will be surprised at what you find. So make sure you check out that course. Okay. But on here, it says the very last step of this workshop is we're going to be doing multiple steps on this one. We want an H3 and a paragraph element. The H3 is going to be responsible for the introduction to JavaScript, while the paragraph element is going to be in charge of this text down here. So the way that I'm going to structure this is I'm going to go ahead and do the H3 here, and then I'm going to close it off. And now I'm just going to grab this text up here. Okay. Now, something that I also wanted to bring up while I'm on this page here is I could definitely do something like this and say, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and do the paragraph tag, all one line. I can do that. But why do we want to move on to the next line? Well, that has to do with readability for you as the developer. So highly recommend you use these different lines of code for you to go ahead and alter and edit while you are going through this. Okay, so just break things up line by line when we're kind of going through these primitive tags that we see here. Paragraph tag, it wants us to add the following. JavaScript adds interactivity to a web page. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in there. And it looks like I forgot to highlight the J, but it is now in there. Now I can go ahead and check the code, and it says we are done. There's no more steps after this. All right, so we made it through this workshop that freeCodeCamp offered, and hopefully by going through it with this video, it helped you out, helped you learn a few things. I'd be very interested to see if you did end up learning something. Make sure you put it down in the comments below. Always read those, always comment to those, and it's another way for us to get to know you as you are going through your learning journey. Don't forget to take a look at the description that is below the video, so that way you can join us with PreCodeCamp, get that accelerated learning going on, because what your dreams are, you know how to get there, but you may need that help, that guidance to push you along the way, because the journey's long, but it's always nice to have a guide guiding you, because you're not going to need that guide for very long. So anyways, Take care, and thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.